On today's show, it is part 2 with myself and Ben Ladner talking about the state of the Eastern Conference and where the Hawks might stack up, and all of that is on the way.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1789 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening into Tuesday. This is going to be part 2 of 2 with myself and Ben Ladner talking about the Eastern Conference. So part 1 is available in your same podcast feed. I would recommend starting there. We're talking about the entire Eastern Conference in kind of a tier perspective, and part 1 is the place to start listening and or watching this conversation. But today's podcast is also brought to you by the folks at the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app right now, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase with Gametime. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? It's game time. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, beyond this 2-part conversation, but also just all year long, to make us your first listen each and every day. Please check out the show and subscribe on Apple, on Spotify, on YouTube. You can also like this episode as you are watching it on that service. And please tell your friends about the podcast as well. As I mentioned before, part 2 right now with Ben Ladner. We have some Hawks talk in the middle of this conversation. It's a little bit longer than usual. This could have been a 3-parter, honestly, but it is what it is. We're trying to cover the entire East in somewhat cohesive fashion, so that's why it's a little bit longer with part 2. But anyway, stay tuned for the rest of this conversation. Enjoy it with myself and Ben Ladner. We'll have more Hawks talk later this week, and here we go with Ben. Now that I've derailed us properly, let's move on to the rest of the teams we haven't talked about a lot in this tier, and then we'll get to the next one. I'll ask this. What do you think of Orlando? Because I think
I love Orlando.
They're the team that's
what do I think about Orlando?
Really
or what do
interesting.
I feel about Orlando?
Either one, because they're the team that's like, I feel like they're really interesting because some people are like all in on the like, this is the next team. They're ascending. They're coming. They had a great step forward last year, and others are like skeptical. And I'm probably more toward that side because I am not the. Sorry, I should say I am not. I am in the growth is not linear camp. And anytime you get a young team take a step forward, people think the next step's going to come like right away. And I don't know if that's going to happen with Orlando, but I will admit they are very intriguing, very, very intriguing. But what do you think about that?
Man, my heart wants to pick Orlando and put them in a tier with Boston. But, my head, well, but that's my irrational,
I know.
Emotional side. My head knows that this is not a good offensive team. That Paolo Banchero has a lot of improving to do from basically, I like to, particularly with the best players on these teams, like the guys who are really driving the offensive success or lack thereof, looking into like shot distribution, shot accuracy, things like that. And sort of look at like, okay, where can they get more efficient? Like their true shooting was this, it needs to get here. Where are they missing out on that? What area of the floor? For Paolo Banchero, it's everywhere. Like he just needs to be a more efficient shooter from everywhere on the floor.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I recognize that reality. I recognize the reality that Franz Wagner is probably not going to be the marksman that, his most optimistic believers thought he might be coming out of Michigan. That at best he's probably going to be closer to an average shooter, and it's just never going to go in at the rate it feels like it should based on watching him and his form and the comfort and liberty with which he shoots. So I know that this is not like a great offensive team, but I also think they're tough as hell and tenacious as hell on defense. And I think like watching them, you do sometimes get the sense that, man, this team is either a couple years or one guy or both away from really putting themselves into like filling whatever vacuum Boston leaves behind or Philly leaves behind, when their best players age out or their teams fall apart or whatever it is, that they might be in position to kind of, fill that void because, who else is there that you really feel like, oh, this is the next team in line? Like in the West, I think it's OKC. They're right there. They're lining up. I don't know that there's anyone in the East who's really like that outside of the teams that are already there. So the most optimistic part of me thinks that Orlando could set itself up to be that team and that there are just a couple of things going right away from that happening. I love Jamal Mosley. I love Jalen Suggs. I like Wendell Carter. I like Franz Wagner. I'm like moderate on Paolo Banchero.
Well, that's interesting. So that last part, I was going to ask you because I feel like if you are a big believer in Orlando's future, you have to be in on Paolo Banchero.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm like halfway in on him.
So that's why I'm surprised that you are like your heart's with Orlando, because I feel like you kind of have to think Paolo is going to be a star, or the whole thing doesn't work. I'm not saying it doesn't work at all, but like upside wise, he kind of has to, because what's their second bet at a star? They don't have one. It's like
I guess that's the philosophical disagreement. I think this is more of a Boston style team.
Okay,
I think
that makes sense.
It's a team of equals, and like everybody's good. No MVP candidate, but you have a lot of just really solid players. That's their path. I mean, they're not there yet. That's their path. It's like Jalen Suggs being prime Kyle Lowry, but more athletic.
I mean, to take it, Jalen Suggs being current Derek White. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, if you
exactly.
Go to Boston, because I like Jalen Suggs a lot. Obviously, I have allegiance to Franz for the college tie, but yeah, I do understand that. I like the KCP ad for them in the short term. It's weird because like they needed the shooting. I don't know. It's just a fascinating piece for them to add. I know why they did it. He was available. They could sign him. Like they had cap space, but like I don't know if that's what they needed. But he helps them for sure. Carter, I like. Yeah, I like Orlando. I don't see the big leap coming this year that some people do.
Neither do I.
But they were still good. I mean, they were a 46-win team last year, something like that.
Yep.
So that's even just like a small step forward, high 40s, 50-ish wins potentially is doable, because KCP will help them. I mean, the big thing is if they're as healthy as they were last year with their you can't ever assume that. You throw in KCP and 51 team is like very reasonable. It's just I don't know about the supporting guys, but we'll see. I
also think there are a lot of questions with them. I kind of wanted them to be a little more aggressive in the offseason, but then you look at their roster and it's like, well, you're going to bring in someone over Franz or Paolo. Like, what was their path?
I think they would have signed PG if they could have, and PG was like, "I'm good. Don't even pitch me. I'm not coming." And because he was the only guy. I mean, as far as cap space is concerned, obviously the gap between PG and KCP is quite large. But as far as like guys that were attainable for them to sign, that was kind of like,
right.
PG's not available. Why don't we'll turn our lonely eyes to KCP and go the supporting player 3-and-D culture guy route, because everybody loves KCP, including me. A very valuable player.
Love KCP. Did you know that KCP and Danny Green are the only two players to win multiple championships in the last 6 years?
I didn't, but that makes total sense to me now that you say it, because I know the teams those guys were on.
I think that says a lot about the state of the modern NBA. I also want to add, I think with Orlando, like, I mean, this is the case. There's always like some alchemy that influences all these teams. And actually, we'll talk about another team that I have in this tier that I think is kind of the opposite of this. But Orlando is one of those teams that, like, I think you have to, at least I feel like I have to give them a little bit of a boost from what I see on paper, just because of their ball movement, their spacing. I know they can't shoot, but they space the floor really well. You know what I mean? Like their concepts.
They are well coached. Yes,
they're super well coached. I love Jamal Mosley, but I mean, their effort level, their connectedness, and you hear them talk about, playing on the team and their teammates and stuff. There really is kind of like a strong fabric on this team. And I think that counts for something. I don't think that like takes you from 5 seed to title contender, but I think that could take you from like 47 wins to 50 wins over the course of the season, And so I think Orlando is one of these teams you sort of have to account for those intangibles and just the fact that they're probably going to generate, 4 more open shots per game than their talent level would suggest, because they're going to make the extra pass to the corner. They're going to find the open man. They're going to swing and generate a layup or a corner three. Like they're going to do those kind of fundamental things that create those small advantages. The problem is they can't shoot, so they're not paying off those advantages at the highest level. But they're going to create them. They're going to be there, and I think that helps buoy this offense. I mean, that's the reason they weren't the worst offense in the league last year, right? I mean, they were 22nd instead of 29th or 30th, because they did all those things, because they screened hard, because they moved without the ball, they cut hard, all these, and obviously the defense is what it is. They communicate, they move, they rotate. I think I wanted to say that about Orlando, that I think it's not just about their talent. There's more kind of at play in this brew of the team.
We'll keep it going, because otherwise we're gonna go for 3 hours, because you and I keep talking forever, as we always do.
We can give Charlotte's time to Orlando. We'll just
we'll do the bottom teams a lot faster for obvious reasons. we're in that range now. You didn't name Miami in your last tier, did you?
I did not.
Okay, so what's your next one? Is it Miami and Atlanta? That'd be my guess. If I had
Yeah,
to guess what your tier was.
so Indiana, Cleveland, or Indiana, Milwaukee, Cleveland, Orlando. Do you want to talk about Cleveland?
We should at
haven't said
least
a lot about
touch
them.
on them. We briefly talked about. I brought them up, but not
Okay.
in depth. So go ahead.
And then my
Give me
next
your
tier, I'll
tier
just
distribution.
lay it out like through
Yeah.
the top 10 because it ends at 10, which I think is a fitting kind of demarcation. Miami, Toronto, Atlanta, in that order.
Ooh, Toronto! People are going to be so mad at you. It's going to be great.
I
And
feel
you
like
will never see that. You will never see the feedback because you don't look at anything on social media. It'd be great
no,
for
I
you.
don't. But I feel it's funny because I feel like there has kind of been this budding rivalry between the Hawks and the Raptors over the last couple of years, which is funny because both of them are like play-in teams, I think, at best. You know, like it's kind of the most like mediocre rivalry that you could come up with. Like, you know, it's not like Boston and Philly, you know, or New York and Boston or anything where they're like hashing it out for a chance at the title. It's just like both fan bases, I feel like, want people to think that their team is the 8 seed, not the other team, you know?
Yeah, I will save that for a second. Anything you want to say about Cleveland before we move
That's
on?
no
Because
shots at Hawks fans. I
We
know
should
we're on
do
a Hawks
that.
podcast.
It's okay. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime, and Gametime is the best place to find tickets. There's nothing like checking out a live event, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. And they also have a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets even easier for you. They filter out all stuff that you don't need and only show you the incredible deals. The great news, they're actually available for you at Gametime. You don't have to waste any time searching through thousands of tickets that you won't be looking for anyway. For example, there are some awesome deals for Braves-Rockies games next week in Atlanta. That includes a pair of tickets for $11 each, including fees for the game on Thursday, September 5th. That's a really awesome deal. Of course, there's more of that happening at Gametime all the time. Plus, that's my personal favorite thing because Gametime has this option for all-in pricing where you actually view seats. Through that all-in pricing, you actually have no surprise fees at the checkout screen when you get to the very end of the process. Also get a view from your seats in the app before you buy them, so you know exactly what you're going to get into before you actually get to that venue that you are looking to buy for. And you're getting the lowest possible price guaranteed with the folks at Gametime. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app right now, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account at Gametime. Read that promo code. It is LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA is the promo code for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? Gametime.
My only thing with Cleveland is just like, I think this thing with Garland and Mobley, or Garland and Mitchell and Allen and Mobley, is real. Like the fact that they just don't seem to hit that high gear with all four of those guys on the court.
Yep.
I think there's something to that. I looked it up, and last year in 819 possessions, this is according to Cleaning the Glass, they had a 113 offensive rating. That was 40th percentile, and a plus 2.7 net rating per 100, which is like okay. But those are your four best players, and being okay with your four best players on the court is not great. So then I went to PBP stats because Cleaning the Glass doesn't break it down this way. But when they have one of Garland and Mitchell and one of Allen and Mobley, so basically just one of each duo, they were plus 5.6 per 100 with a 118 offensive rating, and defenses were both pretty good in those minutes. That was in over 3,300 possessions, so it's a much larger sample size because they were so injured last year. You know, they just didn't have the opportunity for all four of those guys to play together. But it just like, it feels like Garland and Mitchell do the same things, and Allen and Mobley do the same things. And this team, I actually really like this team's depth. Like when you kind of lay out their roster, almost everyone on their team right now going into the season could be a rotation player. Like, I think everyone kind of brings different things to the table. Sam Merrill, Max Strus, you know, Dean Wade. I'm not meaning to just name the white guys. Like Karis LeVert, I think is valuable for them. But my point is just like all of these guys that are coming off their bench bring really unique things to the table, and they kind of give it just a little bit of a different flavor to what's going on. The issue is you can only play one of those guys at a time when you're playing your other four. I'll call them stars, even though they're varying levels of stars. And so to me, like if you're not getting that high end return on your four best players being on the court at the same time, then you have to start asking yourself the question of like, should we just be playing 2 of our bench guys with 3 of our starters, or 3 of our bench guys with 2 of our starters more? And you're starting to kind of weigh the trade-offs of having your stars on the floor versus utilizing the depth at your disposal and all of the different ways that you can like season those lineups with those role players.
Yeah, I like I said, I like Cleveland. I think they're, as long as either, like you said, they have one of the bigs and one of the guards, they're okay. Good supporting stuff. Coaching change will be interesting. I think that's not a downgrade by any means. It's just going to be interesting. We'll see how they handle all that. I'm wary of the upside. I do think that long term, either Bowie's got to figure something out offensively, or he's got to be the center. Those are the two questions. Yeah. Those are the two. But Jared Allen's so good that, like, I'm not saying they got to move on from Jared Allen immediately because he's really good.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's kind of the rub with them. I mean, that's part of
the
like
fit,
the
and same thing with Mitchell and Garland. I think Garland is a point guard, and Mitchell has to have the ball. So it's like, what do you? They're kind of a different version of what the Hawks just dealt with. Yep. They've worked better than Trey and DeJounte did, but it's kind of similar. Your turn, my turn stuff.
Yeah. And I don't even, by the way,
go ahead.
I don't even think it's like a personality thing. I don't think it's a willingness. Like, I don't think they hate each other, that they,
it's just basketball fit. They're just small. They're small and they're both on ball players. And
and same with Allen and Mobley. Like, it's just, they play the way they play and they play the same way.
I agree. So you have, I believe you said Miami, Toronto, Atlanta in that order in your next tier.
Yep.
All right. Let's do a little Hawks so we don't run out of time to do Hawks on this Hawks podcast. I will say, just so nobody else, I'm higher on them than you, given where you put them. I've kind of called my shot a little bit that I think the Hawks are better than the Heat. That's not going to be a universal opinion. I think people are going to be mad that I say that, which is fine. It's more, I want to say more. I both believe in the Hawks more and don't believe in the Heat, but this is like the 5th year in a row I'm low on the Heat, and I've been right 3 out of the 4 years.
I was going to say, the Heat are like not just this guaranteed, like,
no.
I think we rightfully give them the benefit of the doubt, but they don't always earn it. They earn it sometimes.
No, it's driving me crazy. It's driving me crazy because, I mean, I'm looking at this now, in the last 8 years, they've won more than 46 games once.
Yeah.
And people act like they're a 51 team every year, and they're not. They were the 1 seed. That did happen. They were the 1 seed 3 years ago. That was a good regular season team. Last year, they got like I believe it was pretty lucky. I'm looking at this now. Yeah, they were last year, they were like mid 40s win team. Year before that, they're just not that inspiring. And I think that the short version is Jimmy is pretty clearly declined, and people don't want to talk about it, but he has. That's just happened. And that's, by the way, he's like in his mid-30s. That's what happens. But they don't have the juice otherwise. And maybe I'll be wrong. There's always a part of me, as much as I have stated my claim to being low in Miami, there's a part of me that's like, Spo's going to figure out some 10th man that's going to become, and they've done it, but they've done that to be able to like be pretty good,
exactly,
not to be great. So it's like, I don't know. I just don't really buy it again. Like, they didn't, for the 10th year in a row, it feels like they did nothing to inspire me in the offseason. Like, the Khalil Ware pick has upside in the future, but how much is he going to do as a rookie? I don't really know. They lose Caleb Martin and DeLon Wright and replace them with shrug emoji, Alec Burks, Josh Christopher. Like, they're worse on paper right now than they were at the end of last year.
Yeah.
Like,
it's almost like they're testing the Spo principle, They
are.
How much can Spo bend before he breaks? How clever can we force him to be in order to keep this team playoff viable? Because you're right, like, Jimmy's going to be 35 this year. I think Bam just is what he is. And he's a good player, but he's not like an elite player.
We agree on that 100%.
And I just like, those are their 2 best players. And last year they were an 8 seed who lost in 5 games in the first round to the eventual champion.
Which is what they were. I mean, if you watched them, if you watch that team, or at least look at the talent level, maybe if you watch them, you'll see Spo's magic, because Spo is that good, I will say. Mm-hmm. But if you just look at the roster of last year's Heat and put them on a different team, no one's excited about this team. I'm sorry, they're not. Like, the roster's not that good.
Yeah. Well, and so like, I think what we're saying here is, like, we believe in Spo, but we believe in Spo to take this team from being like a 10 seed to a 7 or 8 seed.
No coach is worth 10 wins. Like, maybe they are as far as like a total overhaul system wise, like famously Bud did in Atlanta or Bud did in Milwaukee, but that's not what this is. Like, they already had their system. They're not, he's not taking you 10 more wins. Like
Right.
he's already lifted the floor. It's not going to keep going.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, we're in total agreement on that. I think, I mean, like I said, I have them up technically above Toronto and Atlanta, but again, these tiers,
That's not
you could,
outrageous either. As much as I'm being funny, that's
yeah,
fine. I
you
think
could put
again,
them in any order. I mean, I could easily argue Atlanta, Toronto, Miami in that
well,
order. I
and
mean, you could go either way.
I'm doing this bit, but I think if you look at previews, you look at betting odds or whatever, Miami is going to be a half tier above Atlanta in every single one. What I've seen so far. I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe I'm wrong. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You've heard me talk about FanDuel many times before, and FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. And this time around, though, something a little bit different for you, and that is because right now, between now and September 22nd, all FanDuel customers get bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season game in the NFL, and when it comes to Sunday afternoon out-of-market games. All you have to have is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. When you get there, by the way, you'll know FanDuel Sportsbook is really easy to use. It's awesome. The app over there is great. They have everything that you need in the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, player props, future bets, live betting, and so much more. The app is secure, it's safe, and they cover the entire range of sports as well. NBA, of course, WNBA, NFL season is on the verge. College football season is already going. MLB, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And now is an awesome time to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And all you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to get started. One more time, just visit FanDuel.com and check out America's #1 sportsbook. So, the Hawks. We don't have time to do the exhaustive Hawks thing that I would do with another guest that we were just talking about the Hawks. But I haven't had to talk to you about this. What did you make of what they did in the summer in quick version? And also, like, how good are they going to be? Because last year, of course, they won 36 games. They had Trey was out at the end of the year, all those things. But they were they were firmly a play-in team last year. They were in the 9-10. They deserved to be in the 9-10. That's where they were. And they lost their second best player. I'm using giant quotation marks on that. So what do you make of this?
Yeah, I'm excited about Jalen Johnson. I believe in. I'm excited about
Me too.
Onyeka Okongwu. All the alliterative names get me. Well, maybe Dyson Daniels. Although I'm like reasonably excited about Dyson Daniels. So maybe you could just apply this principle. If you play for the Hawks and you have an alliterative name, like I'm probably reasonably high on you. But like I was talking to my brother actually about this last night. We were at the Braves game and he asked me about. He heard John and me talking about the Hawks trade, and he's like, you're kind of low on Dyson Daniels, and I feel like he is sort of what you need defensively next to Trae Young, so I like the fit from that standpoint. I just don't see a lot of upside with him, and I know that he's young and like he has some skills, and you could develop that. The Hawks haven't shown like the greatest penchant for developing young role players into stars, like see DeAndre Hunter, but also I just don't really see like that end of the floor coming together for him in a super meaningful way. So I like the defensive fit there, but is he going to play enough minutes for that to be like, we're counting on the Trey and Dyson backcourt all year? Maybe not. I think Hunter, like, you talk about a guy who is what he is. Like Hunter is what he is at this point.
That is 100% true. By the way, I have one thing to throw at you, just as a curveball.
Yeah.
In this conversation about Dyson Daniels. Dyson Daniels is, I believe, I'm looking at this one more time, make sure I'm not crazy. Yeah, almost 2 years younger than Jalen Suggs. Why can he not be Jalen Suggs?
That's a good question. That is a good question.
A guy you like. That's why I'm using a guy you like on purpose because
right.
You just said that. And obviously he did not show the same level of on-ball juice as Suggs as a prospect, which I will grant. But as far as that, like, not a true point guard, combo guardy, he's bigger than Suggs, actually. Why can't he be that? I'm not saying he's going to be, but is there an argument that maybe he could be that kind of, like, do it all? I don't want to use Derek White again because Derek White's super lofty. You can't assume that shooting development, all those things. But, like, that archetype of player.
It's a fair question. And I can see the comparison between those two guys. I'm checking their numbers now to either confirm or disprove what I'm about to say. But to me, the pull-up shooting and the downhill aggression are not there for Daniels in the way that
I agree, especially the pull-up. So, no, the only reason why I mentioned it is because Suggs shot it like crap for the first 2 years of his NBA career. And then this last year, had this big jump that was
Yeah.
more like he was in college. And that was more of a thing. So I'm not saying he's going to be Jalen Suggs. I just think that, I don't know. I think Dyson is underrated. Maybe not by you. I think in general, because people don't care about defense. We've done this many times, but his defense is like already fantastic. And but you're right. The offensive end of the floor, I will certainly, even to Hawks fans, is a work in progress with Dyson.
I'll give a quick frame of reference. Last year, so Jalen Suggs came into the league and he took almost 40% of his shots at the rim, about a third from three. He shot 59% at the rim that year. That's about middle of the road. 22% from three. That's obviously terrible. This past year, so 2 years since then, he shot 68% at the rim, and he took about 29% of his shots there, and he shot 40% from three.
No, he shot it great this year. If that's real, I'm so excited about him. Like, I'm so excited about Suggs as a sidebar. If he shoots like that moving forward, then
well, and that's another big question about Orlando. But so basically, rim attempts have gone down since his rookie year, but efficiency at the rim has gone way up. But the reason those attempts have gone down is because he's shooting more from three, because he's turned into this great shooter. So to me, that's the difference. And I think also you talked about Dyson Daniels is bigger than Jalen Suggs. He doesn't play bigger. Jalen Suggs, I mean,
yeah.
Brad, did you know that Jalen Suggs
on offense
football?
for sure?
Did you know he played football in high school?
He was a quarterback in high school. No,
did you know that? On a serious note, he does play like a football player. You know, I mean, you can see that he has that aggression. Dyson Daniels isn't soft, I don't think, but he doesn't bring it to the opponent the way Suggs does.
Yeah, not on offense for sure. I'm with you on that. That was a more non sequitur. Look, we don't have to keep belaboring the Hawks point. I will do plenty of Hawks without you on the show.
I'm happy to.
But so I'll use this framing. They won 36 games last year, right? And I think a lot of people nationally, I'm not including you in this, are just seeing 36 wins, traded DeJounte Murray in a semi-rebuilding move. Not rebuilding, but like not a win now move.
Right. Why
would they be better? And my counter is the guards didn't work, very obviously. I give every stat possible, but they were awful when they played together. Awful. And I'm not saying that for effect. They were actually awful when they played together, last by the numbers. They didn't fit together at all. And yes, DeJounte will be missed, especially when Trey's on the bench. There's no question about that. But with Trey's on the court, he will not be missed in the way that it went last year, especially if Bogey's healthy. I won't say the hot take thing, but Bogey is a better fit. We'll just say.
Yeah. Especially Serbia Bogey.
Well, yeah, that's a monstrous player.
Which I don't think the Hawks are going to get.
I just don't think that last year's Hawks, the true talent level was 36 wins. I don't think that. Now, when you factor in Trey missing whatever it was, 30 games, then yeah, for sure. But it was active sabotage for part of the year as far as the way the backcourt worked together. And then you get a step forward from contrary to we said about Indiana earlier, a lot of Hawks guys, not Bogey and Clint, but almost everyone else is on the right side of the aging curve. So you would actually project some improvement from guys like Jalen Johnson. Hunter, I totally agree with you. Hunter is what he is. I would not do that for Hunter, but Daniels being there now, younger guy, there's some steps forward to be had there. And I still think that Okongwu for sure. I think Trae Young is still very good. Hot take. Still good. Somehow it's seen as a hot take. I don't understand why, but it is. So I'm not saying they're going to look. As we're recording this before I'm posting it, which I've said before I brought you in, but the day that we're recording this, I was reading ESPN's like staff projections, or like their combined. It wasn't Kevin Pelton. It was like their like amalgamation. I don't know who wrote this thing, but it was like their win total projections, and I just shared the screenshot. Number one, that was the funniest thing about this. Hawks fans got mad at the projection, which was 31-51 for the Hawks. Now that's too low. That's not even why I posted it. The thing that I thought was funny in this tier conversation is that the 8 seed was the Heat. The 9 seed was the Hawks. There was a 14 win gap between the 8 seed and the 9 seed on this projection. And I'm like, guys, did we really sit down and think that was going to happen? You're projecting a 14 win gap between the 8 and the 9 seed in the Eastern Conference. I guess it's for effect because they just think, hey, there are 8 teams and this is our 8.
Yeah.
But like, well, come on, what are we doing here?
No, I think that's silly. The Hawks, I mean, they're like but to me, they're between 500. I should say 500 is like lower quartile outcome. Low end to me is like mid 30s. High end is like upper 40s.
And that's basically where I am now. It's funny, but you know how this works. I cover one team the most. I'm going to be like 6 or 7 wins above their Vegas win total, and then I'm going to be called too low on the team, which is just what's going to happen. That's what happens.
You're also going to be called a homer.
Right, exactly. It doesn't matter what I do. I can't win.
Yeah.
But FanDuel, who, again, is a sponsor of this podcast, has the Hawks projection at 35.5 wins right now. I would be on the over of 35.5 wins. Is there a scenario in which they go under that? Sure, there is. I'm not saying there isn't, but there's a reason that number is there. People that are smart are betting the somebody somewhere is betting the under. So it's not like there's not a universal thing here. I think they're like a 500 team as constructed. Now, there's a lot more uncertainty this year than there's been with the Hawks for a while because we don't know what it's going to look like with Dyson Daniels. We don't know what it's going to look like with Jalen Johnson as the number 2 option or whatever it's going to be. But I feel like they're a 500-ish, low 40s-ish win team. And that is, by all accounts, considerably higher than the consensus. And I don't really know why that is. I just explained to you why I think it is. I think people are just literally saying they did this and traded Murray and got worse. And I'm using those things in quotes. So I get why the number is what it is, but take a step further than that, and I think they're back to where they – and I understand not being excited about that. I understand fans not being thrilled with a 41-41 projection, but that'd be an improvement from last year and a future-facing improvement because you made future-facing moves. If you do that and improve, that combination is like, yeah, don't fire up the parade, but if you get better than you were last year while also restocking for the future, that's a good outcome.
Yeah. I'm with you. It sounds
rant
like
over, Ben.
Maybe it's just I'm higher on Toronto and
I think
Miami
you probably are higher on Toronto. Yeah.
We're pretty close on the Hawks. I think everything you said is right. I think the removal of DeJounte Murray offensively, particularly when Trae Young is on the floor, that helps a lot. It helps.
Yes.
Yeah. The problem though to me is still like, I mean, this has all kind of always been the problem with the Hawks. I still don't love their spacing. Like I just wish they had a little bit more spacing around Trae.
That's with good reason, by the way, because I've been saying, I know you're not listening. They are still short on shooting. They just
absolutely.
And that's
again like one of Daniel's limitations and part of my reservation.
Well, Daniel, you know that and I'm trying to keep this short. I promise. The centers, the combination of the centers, Jalen Johnson's kind of an iffy, okay shooter. We'll see. And then when you're not playing Bogey, it gets to be real dicey.
Yeah.
If Bogey's on the floor, you're fine. But if he's not, if it's Trae Daniels and somebody else, a center and Jalen Johnson, Hunter's a decent shooter, pretty good shooter, but not a dynamic guy. So like, you get to be. It's not enough shooting, and I've said that a lot, and I think they probably know that deep down. Maybe they're hoping Risa Shea becomes a knockdown guy, and that's probably what they are hoping for the future. Mm-hmm. But for now, I'm with you on that.
Last thing I want to say on them is that I believe in the power of Larry Nance Jr. I think that guy's awesome.
I like Larry Nance a lot. I'm glad you said that because Hawks fans are probably like, why is he here? What's this guy doing here? You know how it is. He's a boring role player. And I say that endearingly. You know how I feel about boring role players.
Boring in quotation marks. Right. People can define things as they see fit. I think
you and I agree.
Yeah,
you and I agree on this. I'm saying I love a quote-unquote boring role player.
Yeah.
He is that. The only trouble there is like, what's his role going to be? Because they have 2 centers already who are centers. Like Okongwu, I know is not a center-sized player, but like he's been a center his entire life. And then Jalen Johnson's starting power forward. Maybe Larry Nance is the backup 4. That might happen. Maybe they trade Capella at some point. Maybe get an injury at some point. Like there's going to be minutes for Larry Nance. I just don't know, like on opening night, if everyone's healthy, which is a big if, what he's going to be doing. Like he won't play that much. I don't think. If everybody's healthy, like I don't see Larry Nance playing 15 minutes a game. I mean, more than 15 minutes a game.
Yeah, I would put money though on at some point in like January, him like sparking a run and being in the closing lineup that leads them to victory over like the Cavs or someone.
Oh, that's
and he's
very,
like
very
working
possible.
The DHO game. And I think I would even go so far as to say he might be able to get Trae Young moving off some dribble handoffs, catching the ball with an advantage. I just think like the way he plays, he's looking to hand off. He's looking to sort of make kind of momentum plays within the flow of the offense. And I think putting him on the floor with Trae to whatever extent they play together, I like he's going to be looking for Trey. Come off me, get this dribble handoff. I'm rolling downhill. It's not just going to be straight pick and roll all the time. There will be Trey is going to not want to do that, and he's going to want to just get the ball and run pick and roll. So
Right.
you'll have to work that out. But I think the way he plays, it just galvanizes people around him. It gets people moving if they're willing to move. It just kind of creates a dynamic flow to the offense. And so maybe he could be the thing that finally gets Trae Young to move without the ball. But we've said that before. So
I like Larry Nance. I think he's undervalued right now. I also think that he might be traded to a contending team.
Yes. Which I would also love. Like as an NBA fan, I would love to see him on a really good team. And I think the Hawks might even be smart to do that.
Right. And he's on an expiring contract. He hasn't been in camp yet. I mean, he could be traded before camp. It wouldn't.
He may never play a game for the Hawks.
Right. So we'll leave it there for now. Maybe hopefully he won't be traded before this podcast comes out. But okay. So you like Toronto more than I do. And we'll be faster now because we're going to have to be. But why do you like Toronto?
Well, I guess I'm just kind of maybe it's just that I'm intrigued by Toronto because I haven't really seen it with this group as much as I just feel like I've seen what the Hawks are. And I know they've made moves, but like this core, it's been together for a few years. And I just kind of feel like I know what it is. With the Raptors, I have them in the same tier as the Hawks. I think they'll probably win 1 or 2 games more than the Hawks. I just think like there's something interesting here in theory. Scotty Barnes, I think, has a chance if he can up his efficiency just a little bit. Like he had a really good year last year. I know he's kind of divisive and people disagree on how good he really is. I even go back and forth myself on how good he really is. But I think he has a chance to solidify himself as sort of like maybe not a no-brainer all-star, but like a pretty clear all-star guy who like definitely belongs in the conversation, not an injury replacement. He's another one of these guys I went in and I kind of said, okay, where can he improve? Where can he get better? Where are his least efficient spots on the floor? It's floater range. And he's a guy I think can develop a floater and be someone, especially on those like downhill rolls, if he's willing to be a screener. If he can work that shot into his arsenal a little bit more consistently, I think it opens up a lot for him because he's a good passer. He maps the floor pretty well. And if you have to respect that floater, and not to mention just getting downhill, getting into the paint and finishing himself, like he has some untapped potential there. I think I really like Quickly. I think he's dynamic with the ball.
I like him too.
Good pull-up shooter. And I'm intrigued by Barrett. I'm not giving up on RJ Barrett. I know that
he looked good this summer. I will say, I've never been the biggest guy on RJ Barrett, but I think that also it might have gone too far. Like I think he actually might be pretty good.
Yeah, I think he passes reasonably well. He plays hard. He has some defensive versatility. He's not an all defense guy, but he's got some versatility. Like he's an okay player, and I think in this mix in Toronto could be all right. I'm curious where they get their secondary playmaking. I don't know where that's going to come from when Quickly's off the floor, but it's an interesting team.
It is. I do have them below the Hawks, but not far as like the pecking order of the East. I guess this is a good time to ask you what your next tier is, because I have a debate between Toronto and Charlotte for who I have as the 10 seed right now. Because those are the and I don't know if it's a hot take on Charlotte. I feel like I'm always a little bit higher on Charlotte for whatever reason, than I'm always proved to be wrong. And also it's a fate of Chicago. So Chicago's been that team for a while now, and I don't even know what they're trying to do. But I'm not a Josh Giddey guy, and I think DeMar, while DeMar has his flaws, DeMar strapped the Bulls to his back the last couple of years and made them decent enough sometimes by being really good at what he does, and they don't have that guy anymore. And like Vucevic is turbo cooked. There's not a lot to like about Chicago right now. The only thing you would say about the Bulls is that maybe they're like semi-acknowledge that they're not going to be good and they're going to like kind of pivot to the future. But they also traded Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey, who they're now going to pay. So I don't know if that's even true. I don't know what's going on there, but go ahead. What's your next tier?
Well, so we can talk about Chicago because they're in the next tier for me with Detroit.
Ooh, Detroit.
So I have Detroit 11th.
Wait, where do you have Brooklyn?
I have Brooklyn 13th.
Oh, okay.
You talk about a team that doesn't know what they're trying to do. I don't know.
Well, Brooklyn. How about here's? Yeah, I know you're not a betting odds guy. I'm gonna give you the accurate number as of time we're recording this. I believe Brooklyn might have the lowest over/under win total in the league right now on FanDuel. I'm looking right now. Yeah, they have. Okay, I've just given you that caveat. I believe they are the lowest, or at least they are the lowest in the Eastern Conference. Take a guess on what the number is for Brooklyn's win total right now.
19.
19.5.
Wow. Good for me.
Look at you, betting sharp, Ben Ladner. So, needless to say, you're higher on Brooklyn than the consensus if you have them not 14th or 15th. I think it's the Wizards. So,
yeah,
okay,
I think I've just been lower on
now.
Charlotte and Washington.
Okay, so you have Charlotte 14 and Washington 15?
I do.
We should do a side bet off the air, Charlotte versus Brooklyn, and I will definitely do that.
Because yeah.
We'll do a lunch bet of Charlotte versus Brooklyn or something.
Okay, that'd be fun. Yeah, I would do that.
But that's a sad bet. That's a really sad thing that only sickos would ever consider doing. But that's what you and I are. Okay, so that's just to say. Okay, one more time because we're gonna get out of here soon. Say the order you have remaining. Past the Atlanta, Toronto, Miami tier. Go ahead for your last two. You can tell people where the break is. Just one more time.
Yeah, so I've after the Atlanta, I've got Detroit at 11th. I think they've just made themselves competent this offseason. I'm like the title of this tier is I'd be surprised if they're in the playoff hunt. So I'm not like banging the drum for Detroit. I'm not driving the motorcade.
I have a thing to say. Just a logic to you. Whoever's 11th is in the playoff hunt because the play-in starts at 10, Ben. So if whoever finishes 11th,
I know. Well, what if there's a
14
win gap between?
Maybe there is a 14 win gap between 10 and 11. That's right. Maybe that'll happen.
Yes, I mean, and that is kind of how I see. I do see kind of a line of demarcation after 10. But Detroit, I mean, if there's one team that's going to get in there, I think Detroit has. I mean, it sounds crazy given where they've been the last couple of years, but I think just the coaching change, shoring up their rotation, I think they've just made themselves more competent and kind of more professional on both ends of the floor. Not world beaters, but fine. Chicago, I have 12th, kind of directionless. I think obviously they're hamstringing themselves more and more every day that they don't trade Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic.
They've just
held on to those guys for too long.
Oh, they definitely did that. But I will say there was this weird conversation happened this week about Zach LaVine and Hawk stuff. I don't know why. It was not a real conversation, just people speculating. They can't trade Zach LaVine. They've been trying to trade him for 2 years, and there is no team wants Zach LaVine. All due respect, he's still a good player, but he's making $40 million a year and can't stay healthy. And even when he was healthy, he wasn't particularly good this last year. So they can't. Vucevic is a whole other thing. That extension will go down in the annals of all time. That was an absolutely terrible decision. So, and the trade in the first place, but
Cristiano Felicio walked so Vooch could run.
Well, the whole. Sorry, Bulls fans, Ricky O'Donnell and such. The whole Vucevic saga from the trade to the extension is just like mind blowing stuff. You can't do anything worse than that. So no, I hope Detroit's better than Chicago, just for NBA watching purposes.
Yeah, Detroit
did a bunch of weird stuff in the margins, like Tobias Harris for too much money, but he will help them. He's an NBA player. He can play. Tim Hardaway Jr. is like not my favorite player, but like is a professional basketball player. Malik Beasley, same thing. Paul Reed, same thing. Like Paul Reed's useful. I don't know if they're good. They're not good. They need Cade to be good, and I still buy Cade. You know what? I'm looking at the roster again. I have in my notes. They also don't have James Wiseman anymore. That's like a +5 wins right there. Just not have him on the team. Sorry, Jim. I think you might have sold me on Detroit being higher than I had them originally.
I think they're going to be decent, respectable is
different than they've been for the last few years. So
exactly,
I'm in on that.
Yeah, I think it's a huge step in the right direction. So I have Chicago 12th, mainly like I don't know if this is optimism, but to the extent that I have optimism about Chicago, I think it's related to the fact that I think Josh Giddey in this environment will look better than he did in Oklahoma City, at least offensively.
Yeah.
Like just having license to run the offense and, I don't know.
They lost Caruso too. I'm looking at my notes. I always forget that they also, you could argue they lost their two best players from last season. I know Zach LaVine I know Zach LaVine's got more talent than Alex Caruso. I'm not trying to have a knockdown drag out about LaVine and Caruso, but last season, their two best players were probably DeRozan and maybe you could say Kobe White was better than Caruso. I don't know. Whatever you want to say there. Kobe White's good. He's still there. But losing DeRozan and Caruso and replacing them with Giddey, and a rookie, and Matas Buzelis, who I kind of like, but not this year. He'll not be good as a rookie, almost certainly. It's going to be rough for the Bulls, I think. We'll see. Maybe look, I actually hope Levine gets healthy. If Levine is healthy, he's still good. I hope that happens. I don't believe it's going to, but I hope it does.
I also think, I mean, you talked about, this is the last thing I'll say on Chicago, DeRozan strapping them to his back. I think that was for better and for worse. It was mostly for better,
definitely. Yeah.
like vast majority for better. But I think like removing that central pillar from the offense, I think will free other guys. Like Kobe White, I think will have more leeway. Josh Giddey will have some leeway to work. Maybe even Zach LaVine like finds more of a rhythm. I don't know. But I think like not having just that central guy who you have to run everything through, it's going to make them worse overall. But I think, I don't know, maybe there's like
it might help long term.
It's like a 4 steps back, 1 step forward kind of thing to me.
Yeah, I don't think that Josh Giddey is going to be the best player on the Bulls in the future. I didn't like that trade at all, but I agree with the premise all the way down. Okay, after that, you have
Brooklyn 13th. I like, this is just I don't think this is like a terrible team. I think they're
going to be absolutely awful. I think they're going to be absolutely awful. Wretched.
I mean, they're going to be bad. There's no question about that.
Okay,
but
so
they have a roster full of NBA players.
They actually do. I will say they have a better quality of individual player than a team usually projected for this few wins. I will grant you that. Like even the guys they brought in, Bojan and like Zaire Williams, who's not very good. Shake Milton's on this team now, who I've always liked. They lose Mikal. I don't think that losing Mikal Bridges is going to be the only thing that like sinks them. Like that's kind of getting overstated. I'm also this will not be a surprise to you either. I could not be lower on Cam Thomas if you tried.
I was just going to say that.
I'm sure that will be. I'll get yelled at for that. But we're in like we're in like the past the hour mark. It's okay. But I don't see it with Cam Thomas. But I will say, Nick Claxton's good.
Yep.
They have some guys that
I
are
like
still
Trendon Watford.
Useful. They didn't trade Cam Johnson when I thought they were going to.
I think Dennis Schroeder, like in the minutes where Cam Thomas isn't jacking up shots every time he touches the ball, like Dennis Schroeder's competent. You know, he's going to get to the rim. He's going to score. He's gonna do his thing. Like that's something. Again, it's like they're gonna be. I don't think this is a team that's gonna go into the year just like not trying or looking completely hapless. Like they're gonna put their best foot forward for a certain amount of time. And so maybe they win 19 games because they win 15 in the first half of the season, and then they play none of their good players or they trade all their good players in the second half. That's possible. But I think team quality going into the year, I think they're better than Charlotte and Washington, who are my last two teams in my tier 6, which I called the dregs.
I definitely like Charlotte more. I don't care to litigate why. It doesn't even matter. But it's funny. I need to not look at this roster. I think looking at the roster, I would certainly bet the over on 19.5 wins for Brooklyn, even if I think they're going to be awful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're too good for the number to be that low. Now, Washington, we agree as the worst team. They actually have 1 win more projected than the Nets. They're at 20.5 at FanDuel. They won 15 games last year. I don't know why they would be better, to be honest.
No, nor do I.
I mean, they were actually fairly healthy. They got 70 games from Kuzma and 75 games from Denny Avdia last year. 66 games from Tyus Jones, who's not going to be there anymore. Like, they're definitely worse. Like, they lose Denny and Tyus, who were 2 of their top 4 players last year. They also lose Leonard Shamma, who's like an NBA player. Yeah, they brought in 2 lottery picks, but lottery picks are not going to – Alex Sarr is not going to be good as a rookie. Like, there's no chance. Maybe Bud Carrington showed some signs, but like rookie-wise. They bring in Malcolm Brogdon. He can play. That will help them. He's just going to be doing a Tyus Jones impression, isn't he?
Right.
Like, he's not better than Tyus Jones, or maybe he is, but not by much.
Yeah, he's solid.
They got Jonas Valanciunas, NBA player. That maybe helps them. Sadiq Bey won't play for a while. Like, yeah, they're going to be bad. Like, really, really bad. Maybe, okay, what's the way this goes? Maybe, like, Koulibaly makes a jump. I don't know. They still have Jordan Poole.
Even if so.
Jordan Poole's not good at basketball. I'm sorry.
He's Cam Thomas-esque.
That's actually a fun one. We should do that. We should do a Jordan Poole versus Cam Thomas "Who You Got" segment at some point. We won't do it now, but that would be a nice face-off. I actually think I'd rather have Cam Thomas, which says it all. I think
it really does say it all.
We've gone around the bend. Well, I think I'm not even going to nitpick you. You sold me a little bit on Detroit.
Okay.
I could try to
Sounds
say
like I might have sold you on Brooklyn a little bit too.
Oh, I mean, a little, but not. I still have them 14th, but maybe have them for a few more wins than I would have 20 minutes ago. And I like Charlotte more than you do, but I don't even know why I like Charlotte more than you do. Maybe I still hope.
I don't know why I like Charlotte less than you do.
Maybe I still have LaMelo hope somewhere. I don't know. Maybe I like Charles Lee. Well, in fact, I do like Charles Lee. I don't know if it's going to work, but I know Charles Lee a little from his Hawks assistant coach tenure. I do buy that. And I think that's a roster that's just better. And while I was low on him in the draft, I think Brandon Miller is good. So
for sure.
That is part of this is that they have two guys I think are good in LaMelo and Brandon Miller. They have some other adults. Miles Bridges is still a decent basketball player. I don't like him, but he's a decent basketball player. He's on the team. So yeah, I still like them more than the rest of these. But Washington 15 is where we agree strongly. You and I
hand in hand
podcast. Ben, sorry to speed you up at the end, but you got to get out of here. I've kept you way too long. Anything to plug? I know you have this awesome podcast that I go on like twice a year, which you should share.
You do, yeah. Read and React NBA podcast wherever you find and listen to your podcasts. John Sauber and John covers Penn State athletics up in Center County,
yes, he
Pennsylvania. He and I host that podcast, and it's a semi-regular publishing schedule, and check it out at your leisure as often. Or
it's not as frequent as this podcast, but it's also longer, and you don't have to worry about like cutting off or filling in things. And you can go for 3 hours if you want to on the show.
It's freedom, free flowing. Some would argue a little too free flowing, a little too long, but that's what we do.
Podcasting. So. Everybody they want, but people should check that out. I am a listener to Read and React, in addition to an occasional guest on that show. Ben never tweets, but if you want to follow him on Twitter, you could at @BLadner_. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep, that's the one.
You basically just tweet links, right? You don't actually say anything anymore, but that's okay. You're there. You still have
just about. Yeah, and potentially another project coming up soon that may or may not be on Twitter. So
well, if that happens, you can tell me, and we'll share it far and wide. Ben, thank you for doing this. This is, of course, longer than I said I was going to keep you, and we easily could have gone double this length because it's a big project to talk about the entire conference on one podcast. We did that in speedy fashion at the end, but thanks for being here. As always, I will, I'm sure, bug you to come back in the near future. As for everybody else, please subscribe to this podcast in addition to checking out Read and React. Tell a friend, and we'll see you all next time.